The number one barrier that holds people back from improving their technique and their skill is we often hold on to old techniques and methods that worked really well for us earlier on in our climbing, and maybe they were a wonderful stepping stone that got us to where we are now, but they're now holding us back. And this can show up in a couple of different ways. One can be climbing very slowly. Like when you're new to climbing, it's very frantic, it's very rushed. And there are a lot of things that we can do that work great for beginner climbers. So one is, hey, slow down. That just gives you more time to process what's happening, because climbing is very weird. There's so much you can be thinking about that just slowing down gives you a little more time to think about it. And then, so that's a common one. Twisting. Being really reliant on straight, or not even just twisting, but like kind of the straight arms plus twisting. Twisting is fine, and that's something that should absolutely be used at all levels. But the straight arms is a really interesting thing because we look at it as a way to climb more efficiently, but you also have to ask the question, how is it more efficient? Because if climbing with straight arms was more efficient for your fingers, every pro would just climb everything with straight arms.
Right.
But you can pull up any video of V17, you're not going to see many straight-armed moves. Mm-hmm. And it's because straight arms isn't more efficient for our fingers. It tends to place us further from the wall, and we have to travel on a path further from the wall. But it's much more efficient for our big muscles, our pulling muscles. Also, and this is something I find fascinating, it is more efficient in that it is a lower threshold of coordination. Basically, now you have these two wires connecting you to the wall that you're not having to navigate and maneuver, so you just push with your legs, reach up, grab the next one. Versus when we start bending our arms, it is suddenly a much more three-dimensional world that we live in. Like, we have so many more things that we have moving parts that we are now accountable for, which means they can also hinder us. So for a lot of beginners, you can tell them, hey, climb with straight arms, and immediately it works. And I don't think it's so much because it's more efficient for their pulling muscles. I think a lot of it comes down to it's a much lower coordination demand. It's kind of like throwing training wheels on, or actually looking at, I think Strider bikes are super fascinating, like what little kids learn on where they don't have pedals.
Right.
Because the thing is, training, this is just a silly tangent, but this is what I do. Training wheels don't actually really work to teach people how to ride a bike. Like, it teaches you how to pedal and kind of be moving, but it turns out that's not the thing that's really challenging about riding a bicycle. It's the balance. Mm-hmm. So Strider bikes are little kids' bikes that don't have pedals, so they can, kind of run their feet along the ground, and they learn how to balance at speed. And then, honestly, once they just have the motor capabilities to move their legs on pedals, you put them on a bike and they learn immediately. Like, it's no longer this like tear-filled thing of, oh no, the training wheels are gone. Like, I'm about to like eat pavement for the rest of the day. So it's like, I look at straight arms similar to like a Strider bike. It gives us just a little leeway. Like, we get to put our feet on the ground. It feels more safe. We don't have all these coordination demands, but we get to go through moves. We get to experience climbing and so much of it that we get to really learn and absorb a lot of what makes climbing. But at a certain point, you got to bend your elbows.
All right, y'all, just a quick 30-second shout out here for today's sponsor, which is the Crimped app. And I'm telling you, I love Crimped. Long before there was a YouTube channel, I was using Crimped to program my training because it takes the guesswork out of things. We're too busy to worry about this stuff. Open up Crimped. You can either load in a program like a sport plan or a boulder plan, or you can choose from the hundreds of exercises and protocols that they have in there to figure out your week. And at the end of each day and at the end of each week, you get to check them off. You know what's happening. You know what's coming. It will level up your training. I love it so much. Check it out. Hit that link. You can download it for free. All right, let's get back to the interview.
Like, I don't know if y'all know this, but the more you bend your elbow, the closer the next hold gets. Like, that is, like, I mean, if you're doing a pull-up, you got to bend your elbows, or I guess you could just front lever muscle up. But yeah, we have to use our arms.
You're pulling yourself closer to the wall, to the hold, you're getting closer to the next hold.
Exactly. And this is what I was saying earlier. If you look, Like if you watch someone climb something like Burden of Dreams, or honestly just any hard climb that is dependent on really small holds, they bend their arms a lot and they pull themselves into the wall to be under the holds as much as they can, because that's where it's good. You know, you think about dead hanging on small holds, dead hanging on a 10 mil edge. It's like, yes, that is hard, but a lot of people can do it. Climbing on a 10 mil edge where your body is out away from the wall, very challenging. Suddenly it's like the hanging a 10 mil edge, you know, maybe that's like V7 strength versus climbing on a 10 mil edge on like a 30-degree overhang. That's like V12 strength. Very different things. And a lot of it's just where our body position is. You know, obviously speed and coordination comes in, but yeah, climbing with straight arms.
So just in terms of kind of the barrier that we're noting here on this first point, it's not that what we're learning necessarily as beginner climbers is wrong. It's that it's serving our needs as climbers at that point, and at some point, sticking to those as hard and fast rules become a barrier for us to then bring in more advanced or just more arrows to the quiver of what our climbing could be.
You worded it perfectly. That's exactly how I would say it. Yeah, and you know, maybe two other examples. One is locking off. Once again, locking off, while it does require strength, it also is a very low coordination demand. We freeze. We just go completely static. We don't have to, nothing is moving, so it's very low coordination. Once again, it can be really useful, but at a certain point in climbing, it gets way too hard to lock off every move. Like outside of Daniel Woods and Nathan Williams, no one's out there locking off every move. Like, and if you're not one of them, you know, maybe use some momentum. But last one, and I think this is something that everyone can kind of relate to some degree. When you're very new to climbing as a beginner, most people, we always think with our hands, because we're just like looking up and hands need to go up. So most beginners do the same thing. They keep their feet super low, they paddle their hands as far as they can, and then they have to try and chase their feet up behind them. So very early on, they learn, oh, if I do a hand move, I should get my feet up with me. And if you're ever climbing around beginners, you hear them say it to each other all the time. They're like, yeah, get your feet up, use your feet. And wonderful tool. They're absolutely right. You should be getting your feet up as you move your hands. However, after some weeks or months, eventually you hit a point to where you realize, I don't need to get my feet up for every move. Suddenly I'm climbing with my knees in my chest. That doesn't seem effective. So at that point, most of us immediately discard. We're like, oh, yeah, getting our feet up's good, but there's going to be times where this isn't going to serve us. So you get rid of that automatic rule of thumb of keep getting the feet up every move, and you create some nuance there. And it's something most of us do intuitively. And early on, it's very easy because also we don't have much attachment to our climbing style when we've only been climbing a few months. Like we're all terrible. There's nothing to lose by changing things up. But once you've been climbing, 10, 15 years or 5 years, whatever it is, you start to have this attachment to the way you climb and the way it feels to climb and move. And so it can be a little harder to kind of shed these no longer necessary layers.